Good evening and welcome, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of your night to join us for our public hearing this evening. This is a public hearing for an Eagle application to construct a lake outlet for Bankson Lake and lengthen an existing county drain in Porter Township, Buren County. My name is Ryan Blazek. I'm with Eagle's Environmental Support Division. I'm just going to be helping to moderate the public hearing tonight. But before we get too far, I just have a couple things to go through in case you haven't joined us for one of these virtual public hearings before. This is what our agenda is going to look like tonight. We're starting off with an introduction. That's what we're doing right now. And there's going to be two parts to tonight's hearing. We're going to start off with an informational session where the applicant is going to present some information on this project and application, and we'll have a question and answer session with Eagle staff. And then after that, we're going to go through ways to submit an official comment, and then we're going to start the second part, which is making comments on the record for this official hearing. So you'll all have an opportunity to make a statement on the record for this application. And then we're also going to go through who to contact with further questions. All right, just so you're aware, all lines are going to be muted during the hearing, so you'll be able to hear us, but we can't hear you. That is until there's designated times when you can either ask a question or make a comment. We'll talk about how we're going to do that later on. You can submit your questions, though, for the Q&A session with the Eagle staff using the Q&A box in your Zoom toolbar. And we'll answer as many of those as we can with the time we have. And then also, we're going to be recording this hearing, so it'll be available on Eagle's YouTube channel in a couple days. All right, at this time, I'd like to invite our other Eagle staff who are on the line to turn their cameras on and introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. I'm Zach Harrison, and I'm the hearings officer for tonight.
And I'm Derek Carrollson, District Supervisor, Kalamazoo District Office. Cover the 8 counties in Southwest Michigan.
All right, thank you both for being part of this hearing tonight. We're going to move right into the informational session. We have Chad Mincarelli on the line that we're going to unmute, and Joe Parman as well. So see if we can find you in the audience. And Chad, looks like you're unmuted. I've got your slides here. You can just let me know when to move on to the next slide. We only have, about 10-15 minutes for this session and to leave us some time for Q&A. And then we're going to move on to the next part at around 6:30. So it'd be great if you could, keep it around 10-15 minutes as far as the slides go. But just to confirm, are you there, Chad?
Yep. Can you hear me here?
Yep. We can hear you. Just
Great.
Let me know when you want your slide to move on to the next one. And
Okay,
we'll
great. As Ryan was saying, my name is Chad Mincarelli. I work at Land and Resource Engineering. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Vancast Intercounty Drainage Board, and specifically Joe Parman, the Van Buren County Drain Commissioner, who's acting as applicant for this process. So, next slide, please. So, just in terms of what our presentation will be within this, I guess the greater presentation here. We're going to kind of go into a little bit of the drain overview, project background, which many of you probably are kind of in the audience are probably aware of a lot of it. Some of the drainage issues, the proposed project scope, and then a summary of the regulated activities in relation to the proposed project. So next slide, please. So just kind of a rough or a kind of a broad drain overview here. The Vancast County Intercounty Drain is shown there in the image to the right. It's that blue line that's coming up. It's tributary to the Rocky River watershed. The drain was established in 1920, and it's got a length of approximately 4.1 miles of established drain. The watershed area is approximately 5,500 acres, and included with that is Bankson Lake, which is approximately 217 acres. Marcellus Township and Porter Township, Marcellus and Cass, and Porter Township and Van Buren are included within kind of the drainage area for the Van Cass County or inter-county drain, excuse me. And the drainage area is made up of agricultural lands along and residences along or around kind of Bankson Lake and kind of scattered throughout the drainage area. The drain itself has a history of improvements and petitions. The first being the establishment 1920, and then successive maintenance and petitions after that in 1939, 1961, and 1969. And there's been ongoing maintenance on the drain itself since the 1970s. There was a petition submitted in the early 50s, 1952, due to flooding around Bankson Lake, but that no project was ultimately completed in relation to that petition. So next slide there, please. So the project background, not going to get into a ton of detail with this. I'll just kind of give the broad strokes here. So a petition for maintenance and improvements to the Van Cass Intercounty Drain was submitted to the Van Buren County Drain Office. It was filed. It was signed by 69 freeholders of land, and it was done in accordance with Chapter 8 of the Michigan Drain Code. The petition itself was filed in the spring of 2019 due to high water concerns at that time around Bankson Lake. The petition was determined practicable by the Intercounty Drain Board on August 23, 2019, and later it was found to be necessary and conducive to public health, convenience, and welfare by the Van Cass Intercounty Drainage Board at a meeting on December 23, 2020. Next slide, please, Ryan. Thank you. So once the project was found necessary, several things several items were completed. Topographic survey and engineering study was completed in the spring of 2020. The purpose of the engineering study was to assess the existing conditions of the drain itself, and then to identify any impairments and or deficiencies to the drain, and then to evaluate feasible alternatives to help alleviate some of the high water issues around Bankson Lake at that time. Ecological assessment and water quality sampling was also completed as part of this project. Preliminary work was completed by Streamside Eco, formerly known as Streamside Ecological Services, in 2020. And then in 2023, after some time, additional water quality sampling was complete and ecological assessment was completed. The purpose of the assessment, again, was to identify any potential impact to aquatic resources within Bankson Lake and downstream receiving waters, kind of specifically some of the wetlands downstream and the actual water course, which is the Van Cass Intercounty Drain a little bit further downstream of the lake and the wetland area. Final engineering design was completed in 2022 and 2023. And then the Eagle permit application that we're here for tonight was formally submitted in the spring of 2024. Next slide, please, Ryan. So I guess to go through some of the drainage issues that led to that petition. Again, at the time of the petition, there was Bankson Lake was abnormally high. I believe the water surface elevation at that time was measured around approximately 902. More exactly, I think it was 901.7, which is what it was surveyed at. There's no surface outlet for Bankson Lake, but there is sufficient grade that exists from the southern end of Bankson Lake to the Van Cass Intercounty Drain that would allow for a gravity outlet. And then just to kind of cover it again, at the time of the petition, Bankson Lake was approximately, we have 3.5 feet above the normal water elevation. That water elevation of 898 feet was per the USGS. And then just, one thing to note here, and you can kind of see it from that image on the right. At this time, at the time of the application here, the homes around Bankson Lake are serviced by private sanitary systems. There may be a project coming down the line to service it with public. I noted that there was some comments related to that, and the comments we saw from the submitted public hearing comments to date. So that could be coming down the line, but at this time, these homes are serviced by septic systems. So next slide, please. So I guess one thing just to note, the water surface has receded since the petition. We're not at that, 901.7 or approximately 902 feet anymore. Kind of during the last, year or so since I've gotten involved in this project, we've been kind of actively surveying the lake elevation of Bankson Lake. You can kind of see those numerous times we've been out. So last August, we noted that it had receded down to 898.4. This summer, after those rain events, kind of in late June, early July, the lake went up to 899.1. And then we surveyed it this week again, and it had receded down to 898.5. So the lake does fluctuate. It's down from its high point in 2019, but you can kind of see that it does fluctuate still a little. Annual precipitation data, again, this is just kind of for reference. Not going to get too much into that. This data is from the MSU weather station, Lawton. We can kind of just see since 2012 that average kind of rainfall increasing. We're down a little bit from the high rainfall from 2016 to 2019, but it does look like we're kind of creeping back up to some of those levels. So next slide, please. I'm not going to beat this to death, I guess. there was a lot of photos submitted to Eagle. There's a lot of photos out there. We have a lot of photos, but this is just to highlight some of those drainage issues that were noted or were occurring in 2019. So again, most of these photos are from 2019. We have them from various portions or parts of the lake. Again, we didn't provide all the photos in this slideshow that we have on file, but these are just a few that kind of demonstrate some of the issues that we saw, and some issues specifically related to public health, convenience, and welfare. Again, flooding and property damage due to high lake levels caused by lack of adequate drainage outlet. Again, you can kind of see what's going on in that photo. There was a lot of flooding. There was roads underwater at that point. There was damage to property. If you look down in that image below the photo, you can kind of see some of the surveyed, finished floor or garage elevations that are there. Again, a lot of those were kind of hovering around that. A lot of those finished floors are at or slightly below or slightly above that high water elevation that was observed kind of in March 2020. So next slide, please. So again, just more photos here, and I think we've all seen these. They've been submitted to Eagle. Many of the residents have seen these. Many of the people on this call have seen these, have commented on these. Not gonna beat it to death, but again, these are just some of these other public health, welfare, and convenience issues that were noted at the time of the high water. Specifically some road flooding there in the image to the right or to the left, excuse me, and then the ramp, the DNR ramp there is underwater in the image to the right. So, inundated structures at risk of flooding, in some cases, septic systems, obviously within the vicinity of this high ground or high lake water as well. So, again, one of those issues related to public health that we talk about. on these types of projects, excuse me, is elevated groundwater impacting, how your septic system is functioning and whatnot. So, again, just another public health, welfare, and convenience issue. So, next slide, please, Ryan. I think this is our last image slide. Again, this is just showing some more photos of what we saw out there, kind of in the spring of 2020. We had roads covered in water, maybe not necessarily inaccessible, but definitely we saw elevated water levels that were covering roads at that time. So, and then just another image there on the lower right hand side, just a structure adjacent to the lake, that was impacted by the high water levels. So, next slide, please, Ryan. Oh, I was mistaken. One more slide, I think, here. So again, not going to beat it to death. I mean, structures inundated by high water here. Again, this is another one of those, flooding / property damage due to high lake levels. Just some other portions around the lake or other locations around the lake where we saw this going on. So next slide, please. So, kind of went through the drainage issues, what was happening at the time of the petition. So we went through obviously some other processes with this. There was a time frame when the project was put on hold while some other processes were working out, but kind of through kind of that time and then through some additional public meetings that we had with the Intercounty Drain Board, which we had a good showing with some residents there. We kind of formulated this project scope. And the big thing here is the proposed extension of the Van Cass Intercounty Drain to provide a gravity outlet for Bankson Lake. What we're proposing as part of this project is an overflow structure, an adjustable overflow structure on the south side of Bankson Lake. Kind of through these meetings with residents, we kind of understood or kind of listened to some concerns related to the water level, maybe, not wanting to bring the water level down too much. So, basically what we did is we designed this structure to activate kind of at that 899 feet NAVD 88 level. So even today, when the lake level is at 898.5 or 898.6, whatever it was, you would not have water going over the adjustable weir structure. So that's important to note. The other thing that's important to note is we're not proposing any kind of drawdown of Bankson Lake as part of this project at all. So again, we're proposing an overflow structure to help alleviate flooding and potential damage during these high water or high lake events or high water events on Bankson Lake.
Chad, just to give you a time check, we're going to have to move on, and we've got a couple minutes left for your presentation, so just want to let you know.
Okay, sorry, but sorry, man, I'll go faster here. So thanks, Ryan. So next slide, please. So again, just kind of going through the proposed project scope, and I'll kind of move through this a little bit faster because we're up against it on time. So extension of the open channel, approximately 5,500 feet, approximately 600 linear feet of 24-inch storm sewer from the lake to empty out into this low wetland area south of the lake. Installation of the adjustable overflow structure in Bankson Lake, and then installation of a wetland hydraulic control structure. And I'll just go through that on the next slide if you could, Ryan. Oop. I missed a slide. Couple slides here, maybe.
So you say next slide?
Yeah, just go to the next slide. So those are the summary. Yeah. So previous slide was the summary of regulated activities as part of this project scope. I think Eagle can kind of go through that, or I think they have gone through that in the letter that they sent out. So I'll just kind of go through quickly what the project scope is going to be in relation to our design. So this is the profile, centerline profile, the proposed extension. This is starting all the way down in the Van Cass Intercounty Drain, south of Bankson Lake, and then is moving north. So as you go up in stationing, you're moving north. So on this portion of the profile, you'll see the wetland hydraulic control structure. It's called the wetland control structure on this slide. And next slide, Ryan, I can go through that quickly. So this is the kind of the hydraulic control structure for the wetland downstream of Bankson Lake. This really has no bearing on Bankson Lake itself. This is simply to help mitigate potential impacts to the wetland complex south of Bankson Lake that we're discharging the overflow water from Bankson Lake into. So this structure is designed to hold water levels up in the wetland, so that we're not having any kind of adverse hydrologic impacts by draining that wetland with a channel. So next slide, please, Ryan. So this is just continuing north on the profile. This is the existing the proposed drain extension through the wetland. You can see we're taking out about 4 foot, a channel about 4 foot deep through there. Again, downstream of this is that hydrologic wetland control structure. So, you know, we'd be basically kind of still managing the existing hydrology of maintaining, excuse me, the existing hydrology of this wetland. So next slide, please, Ryan. So this is more of the same. I'm not even going to comment on this one because it's just moving north, just more channel excavation and extension there. So next, please. So this is as we get towards the outlet of that 24-inch pipe. So the end of the wetland or the end of the large complex to the portion of the drain extension that's going to be enclosed. And then again, we're still continuing kind of north along north to Bankson Lake here. One thing to note, all the dredge material from, or all the excavated material from the wetland area to create the channel is going to be disposed of in an upland location. You kind of start seeing where our proposed disposal location is in this profile. So it's outside of the wetland boundaries. So next slide, please.
All right, and Chad, we're gonna have to move on to the next
Okay.
part with the Q&A. So is there anything you want to conclude with before we do that? And then also,
I guess the only thing I'd want to conclude with again is this is an overflow structure that's from Bankson Lake. Currently, it's has some adjustment that we built into, or there's adjustable logs into it to allow, you know, fluctuation in the lake. So again, right now, no water would be going over this thing because it's below the proposed weir elevation. There's no drawdown that we're proposing as part of the Bankson Lake, or as part of this project to Bankson Lake. Yeah, I guess those are the two things I just really want to hit on there. So.
all right, yeah, thanks, Chad, for that information and presentation on the project. At this point, we're going to move on to the question and answer session where people have an opportunity to ask a question. And to kick that off, I'm going to hand it off to Zach, our hearings officer, as a few words before we start. Oh, we can't hear you, Zach. Yeah, I heard you there.
We just wanted to preface the Q&A session by asking those in attendance just to be courteous and respectful of those providing this opportunity tonight. And just please understand that we reserve the right to mute your microphone if you're profane, uncourteous, or unprofessional.
I'm going to speak up a little bit, Zach, or use maybe Derek's mic. I don't know. We can hear you, but it's really soft.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly now?
Try that.
Okay, can you hear me more clearly?
That's much better.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll just start from the top. So we just want to preface the Q&A session by asking everyone in attendance to be courteous and respectful to those of us that are providing this opportunity tonight. And just please understand that we reserve the right to mute your microphone if you're profane, uncourteous, or unprofessional, or you're using personal attacks against us or the applicant. And the applicant for the project has elected to not field any questions tonight. So all your questions will be answered to the best of my own and Derek's ability. And if we do not get to your question tonight, or if you would like WRD staff to provide your question directly to the applicant, we suggest you follow up via email after the hearing tonight.
All right, yeah, thank you for that, Zach, that information. So the way we're going to do the question and answer session is you can submit your question using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. I already have several in there. Or if you want to ask your question verbally, you can click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. That'll raise your hand in Zoom and we'll call on you. If you're using a telephone and are calling in today, you can select #2 on your phone, and that will raise your hand in Zoom and we'll call on you using the last 4 digits of your number. I'm just going to go back and forth between the Q&A box and people who have their hands raised. And just to note again, this is the question and answer session. So we're going to be taking questions for our Eagle staff. If you have a comment related to the project and application, hold on to that. We're going to go through the hearing portion of tonight where you'll have an opportunity to make that comment a little bit later on. But for now, we're in the Q&A session portion. So I've got some in the Q&A box. Okay, here we go. Were any houses documented as being quote unquote flooded during the high water period?
Yeah, I can take that one, Ryan. So when we received the application materials, one of the cover pages for the site plan shows, I believe, 25 different structures around the lake that the applicant has identified as this critical infrastructure that's at risk of damage due to nuisance flooding associated with the 100-year flood event. So these structures include septic systems, garages, and homes. I don't believe that we've differentiated between how many number of homes there are versus septic systems that are at risk versus garages. So as we do understand that there are some homes that were flooded based on the photos that we received, or at least inundated with water. The exact number of homes, that information has not been provided to us.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the info, Zach. We're gonna move on to the next one. See how if we can get to as many questions as we can. This one's kind of a longer one. So what was the initial purpose of the existing Van Cass inter-county drain? Does it currently work as intended? Existing properties south of Bankson Lake have been flooded during the same periods of time that Bankson Lake experienced higher water levels. What additional crop losses and environmental damages might be caused by sending additional water to already flooded areas currently serviced by the existing Van Cass inter-county drain during periods when high water levels exist? I know that was a lot to unpack. If you want me to break it down, I can.
I think that's okay, Ryan.
Okay.
I think this particular question may eventually be better suited to be addressed by the applicant themselves, but at least the way that I understand the county drain to work is to provide drainage relief to a certain area for properties that maybe already are experiencing flooding downstream of the lake during high water level events. I know the applicant has provided some hydrologic calculations that, based on their numbers, suggest that the amount of water traveling through the proposed lake outlet during the 100-year flood event would, based on their calculations, be within, or I guess, as they've said, insignificant, and would not cause additional flooding downstream. Again, these calculations, they're just what have been provided to us. they're part of our ongoing review of the application materials. And we're still actively discussing and reviewing that information that's been provided to us.
All right, thank you, Zach. This question was asked before the presentation, so I think some of it may be answered, was answered during the presentation, but the question is, this person has one fundamental question, and why do they need a drain? Is there anything you want to add to that? I guess outside of what was in the presentation today?
I can just clarify that the purpose that's been identified for the structure, or I guess the reason, for the drain is to provide relief during high water events. So like during the 100-year flood event, to provide relief to these structures that are low elevation structures that the applicant has identified as at risk of damage due to high water levels. So that's the fundamental purpose of the application.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Did you look at lake levels for the past 20 to 25 years? I'm assuming in the application or as part of Eagle's review, maybe.
I don't recall that we've had extensive data provided to us in terms of like the lake elevation fluctuations in the past few decades. As far as I understand, the surveyed elevations only date back to the most recent flooding events. I believe that's the extent of the information that's been provided to us as far as historic lake levels go.
All right, thank you. What's the range of fluctuation of the gate structure proposed, and who sets it?
So the lake outlet structure during a normal condition will be set to 899 feet. As Chad explained earlier, during flooding situations, which the application identifies as the 100-year flood, that structure, that weir elevation will be lowered to 898 at the lowest. And then theoretically, once the flooding situation or concern is relieved, the outlet structure would be once again raised to the 899 level. As far as I understand, the one in charge of lowering and raising the weir would be the Van Buren County Drain Commission.
Okay, thank you. And I'm bouncing around a little bit because people have multiple questions, and I'm trying to make sure everybody at least gets some of their questions answered. What happens if the outlet control structure filter cloth gets clogged and the water and invasive species just overflow through the open grate on top of the structure?
So that's, I guess that's a question probably better suited for the applicant, and perhaps that's something we can get an answer to you after the hearing tonight. I know the applicant has mentioned that there would be at least annual maintenance of the outlet structure, including, I assume, any unclogging of any debris that's kind of been accumulated at the outlet structure.
Okay, all right, thanks, Zach. We're getting close to time, so got a couple more questions that we'll get to. One is, will Eagle complete their own studies related to if or what the existing drain can handle?
So that's part of our ongoing review of the application materials, understanding the hydrologic calculations that have been provided to us, discussing those internally, understanding if we agree with what's been proposed. That's the extent of what our review involves.
All right. Let's see here. Who adds back and removes stop logs at both control structures?
So again, I believe both control structures will be maintained or adjusted by the Van Buren County Drain Commission.
Okay. Thank you. All right, this is gonna have to be the last one before we move on to tonight, because we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to make a statement. Is it unusual that the applicant doesn't answer questions during this process or these process? Does Eagle look at 25 structures before approving the permit? And then what does Eagle do to ensure preservation of the wetlands? So it's kind of a three-part question, I guess.
Okay. Addressing the first question,
Is it unusual that the applicant
they don't
doesn't?
necessarily have to answer questions. You know, it's upon them. They have the opportunity to do so. They're not obligated by any means to do so. I will say if there are any questions that you would like to direct directly towards them, I can act as somewhat of a middleman between anyone who has a question and then the applicant. You can follow up after the hearing tonight with a question to me via email or by mail. You can call my cell phone, and I can forward those questions on to them. And then, you know, if they warrant a response or if they would like to respond, they can certainly do so. As to your second question, I'll take that to mean, have we conducted a site inspection on these 25 structures, or if we plan to conduct a site inspection? And I will say we have not yet conducted a site inspection across kind of the project area. That's planned for next month, but certainly something we plan to do before rendering a decision on the application. And the third question, what does Eagle do to ensure the preservation of our wetlands? So this kind of gets back to the, I guess, permit review criteria that we filter any application that we receive through. So anytime an applicant proposes a project, we have to consider certain things about the application. So, for example, are there any feasible or prudent alternatives to the proposal? Are there ways to minimize, avoid the impacts that have been proposed? You know, is the project itself within the public interest? Is there expected to be any, you know, additional secondary cumulative impacts associated with the project? Those are all things that are associated with our review of the permit application materials. And our eventual decision is eventually rendered dependent upon, you know, the culmination of our review for all of those criteria. And I guess, and that's all of them.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Zach. I'm gonna address one question that's on here, and it was if the presentation used the time up for the question and answer period for the question, and the answer is no. We actually went about 10 minutes over a question and answer period to make up for that time, so that we had the same amount of time to go through the questions as we would have if the presentation didn't go over. But thank you for asking that. All right, so yeah, thank you, Zach and Derek, and to our presenters, presenter Chad, for providing that presentation. We're going to move on to the next part of tonight's hearing. But before we do that, I want to let you know, make sure you're aware, there are other ways to submit an official comment by MyEnviro. You provide comments directly to MyEnviro by accessing submission HQ1 XX8WAQNKZ. We're gonna put this link in the chat as well, or by mail to Eagle Water Resources Division, Kalamazoo District Office, 7953 Adobe Road. That's ADOBE Road, Kalamazoo, Michigan, 49009-5025. And the comment period will be open for 10 days after tonight. I should mention that we'll also be providing Zach's number in case you had and contact information later on tonight, in case we didn't get to your question. And we'll also be providing this slide again, in case you don't want to make a comment tonight, but want to provide comments on this project. We'll provide this information to you again. All right, so with that, I'd like to invite Zach, our hearings officer, to read the opening statement to kick off the hearing part, where you have an opportunity to make a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. This is a little long-winded, so everyone please stay patient as I read this out. So good evening, everyone. My name is Zach Harrison, and I'm the district representative in the Water Resources Division of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. I'll be serving as the hearing officer for this public hearing on Eagle submission number HQ1 XX8W AQNKZ. And with me tonight is Derek Haraldson, Kalamazoo District Supervisor for the Water Resources Division. And to describe how this is going to work tonight, I will begin with some background information about why we are here. I will then describe the purpose of the hearing and how your comments will be used. Following that, I'll outline the procedures under which we will take your comments and then describe what will happen after tonight's hearing. There will then be time for you to provide comments, and we will spend the majority of tonight listening to those comments. At the end of the hearing, I will read the closing statement. By the way of background information, the Water Resources Division is responsible for administering a variety of programs that help protect inland lakes and streams, wetlands, floodplains, sand dunes, and the Great Lakes. These programs regulate certain activities, such as dredging or filling a lake, stream, or wetland, constructing a dam, constructing a marina, placing shoreline protection or constructing docks, and building in a designated critical sand dune area, wetland, or floodplain. The law governing those responsibilities is the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 1994, PA 451 as amended. And we're here tonight specifically because as part of a project to construct a gravity overflow lake outlet for Bankson Lake, Joe Parman, the Buren County Drain Commissioner, has proposed the following activities. To construct a lake outlet structure measuring 10 feet long, 10 feet wide, 4 feet deep at the south end of Bankson Lake. The lake level will be controlled by an adjustable weir set to an elevation of 899 feet above mean sea level. And the adjustable weir is designed to allow for the applicant to adjust the lake elevation to 898 feet above mean sea level to alleviate flooding of residential properties. As part of the lake outlet, 42 cubic yards of riprap will be installed in wetland near the lakeside inlet. Additionally, install approximately 1,599 linear feet of 24-inch diameter storm sewer, 269 linear feet of which is in wetland, to connect the lake outlet to the proposed drain channel, and to place approximately 3 cubic yards of riprap in a 7-foot long, 7-foot wide, 1.5 foot deep configuration in wetland at the end of the outlet pipe to serve as end treatment. And to mechanically dredge approximately 7,458 cubic yards from emergent and forested wetland and 121 cubic yards from the existing stream to create an open channel ditch, ultimately connecting the existing van cast drain to the proposed outlet pipe. The new open channel ditch will measure approximately 5,515 feet long, 12.5 feet wide, and 3 feet deep. Excess dredge material will be placed in an on-site upland location. As part of the activities, they propose to place temporary construction matting in approximately 1.9 acres of wetland to facilitate site access for the proposed channel creation. And they plan to construct a steel sheet pile structure, a wetland control structure that is, measuring approximately 35.4 feet long, 0.3125 feet wide, and 12 feet deep within the newly created channel and in wetland. Also proposed to place approximately 24 cubic yards of riprap in wetland and the connection of side inlets to the new channel. And to facilitate all of these construction activities, selectively clear vegetation in approximately 3.76 acres of wetland. Ultimately, the proposed activity will permanently impact approximately 0.55 acres of forested wetland and 1.3 acres of emergent wetland. The proposed activity will temporarily impact 0.77 acres of forested wetland, 1.14 acres of emergent wetland, and 0.24 acres of scrub shrub wetland. And the applicant has proposed wetland mitigation through the purchase of wetland mitigation credits. So in order for a permit to be granted, Eagle must find that the proposed activities described in the public notice meet certain criteria set by Part 301, Inland Lakes and Streams, and Part 303, Wetland Protection of Act 451. In general, we must consider the effect of the proposed project on the lake, stream, and wetlands. Specifically, when reviewing an application for permit under the provisions of of Part 301 in the lakes and streams of Act 451, Eagle is charged to make the following considerations as required by Section 30106 of Part 301. First, the department shall issue a permit if it finds that the structure or project will not adversely affect the public trust or riparian rights. And two, the department shall not grant a permit if the proposed project or structure will unlawfully impair or destroy any of the waters or the other natural resources of the state. When reviewing an application for a permit under the provisions of Part 303 Wetland Protection of Act 451, Eagle is charged to make the following indicators as required by Section 30311 of Part 303. A permit for an activity listed in Section 30304 shall not be approved unless the department determines that the issuance of a permit is in the public interest, that the permit is necessary to realize the benefits derived from the activity, and that the activity is otherwise lawful. So first, a permit shall not be issued unless it is shown that an unacceptable disruption will not result to the aquatic resources. And two, a permit shall not be issued unless the applicant also shows either of the following. One, that the proposed activity is primarily dependent upon being located in wetland, or two, a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in the Van Cass Intercounty Drain Project an opportunity to provide information that Eagle can use in making the decision whether or not to issue a permit. Please recognize that Eagle can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria that Eagle must use in making a decision. Some of you may simply want to express your support or opposition to the project. We will be happy to make note of your position, but please understand that Eagle is, by law, not allowed to base our decision on whether or not there is widespread support or opposition to the project. So in just a moment, I'll outline the procedures we will use for taking your comments. But before I do so, I have to mention that the notice of this hearing was published in the Courier Leader, the weekly newspaper in circulation in this area, on October 24th, 2024. So as we discussed at the beginning of the informational session, if you have a comment to provide, raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar. To ensure that the hearing is conducted in a fair manner, we will follow the following steps. So first, the applicant and or their consultant has already had an opportunity to describe the proposed project. And second, we plan to call on those of you that have indicated in their registration that they'd like to speak. And after that, we will call on all of those that have raised their hand in the Zoom toolbar that they would like to make a comment if they haven't already been called upon. As a reminder, if you are participating in this hearing via telephone only, follow the directions of the moderator on how to identify that you would like to make a comment. You may also submit your comments to Eagle via the My Enviro portal, email, or US mail. And when all the comments have been completed, we'll ask if anyone else would like to make a statement. So when your name is called on, your microphone will be unmuted. And as you begin your comments, please state your name and any group or association you may represent. Each person tonight will be given 3 minutes to make their comments, and we will indicate to you when you have that minute left. So please begin wrapping up your comments and end with the allotted time. If need be, we will indicate when your time is ended. So again, I ask that we all be courteous and respectful to one another tonight. Again, please understand that we reserve the right to mute your microphone if you are profane, uncourteous, unprofessional, or use personal attacks against the applicant or Eagle staff. Please also recognize that Eagle staff is here tonight to provide a fair opportunity to you to express your comments on the proposed project and to listen to those comments. So this hearing is being recorded and your comments will be part of the information Eagle will consider in making its decision on whether or not to issue a permit on the proposed project. The public comment period for this public hearing is open for an additional 10 days from the date of this hearing and ends on November 17th, 2024. Additional information and comments submitted in writing during the 10-day public comment period will also be considered in Eagle's decision. And following the close of the public comment period, Eagle will make a decision to either issue a permit for the project as proposed or with modifications or send a letter of denial. You may find out what the decision is by checking the Eagle My Enviro portal website and searching for the application number HQ1XX8W8QNKZ. So thanks everybody for paying attention during that. We will begin calling names of those who have indicated that they would like to make a statement.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Just to, I guess, reiterate some things that Zach just mentioned. Yeah, so I have a list of names that during registration indicated they wanted to make a comment. I have 8 names on the list. We'll start with those. Once we get through all of those comments, we'll go through anybody else who would like to make a comment. And if your name hasn't been called, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you to make your comment. If you're on the phone, you can select #2 and that will raise your hand in Zoom and we'll unmute you using the last 4 digits of your phone number. It'll be 1 comment per person. Everyone will have an opportunity to make a comment tonight. And as Zach mentioned, everyone will have 3 minutes to make a comment. You'll see a countdown timer in the upper right-hand corner of your screen once you start making your comment. And then when you have a minute left, we're going to give you a heads up with this sound. So you'll hear that ding, so just to know that you have 1 minute left before your time is up. I also understand there's maybe more than 1 person on a given login that would like to make a comment. Just let me know when the first person is unmuted when we call on your name. If you have more people on the line who would like to make a comment, it's 1 comment per person, not per line. So just let me know that, and then we'll go through everybody on that line or login who would like to make a comment at that time. They'll just need to mention their name, and then they can begin making their comment. We'll go on to the next person, and so forth. And so that goes for everybody else. When you have to make a comment, please identify your name. If you have any affiliation, please identify that as well. And we'll go ahead and get started. So the first person we have is Heather Smith. So Heather, we are going to unmute you on our end. And then you can unmute yourself by selecting the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen, and that will unmute you. So it looks like you're unmuted on our end. So if you would like to make a comment, just select the microphone icon. That will unmute you, and then you'll be able to make your comment. And it looks like, Heather, you're still muted. So what we'll do is we'll go on to the next person and come back to you, Heather, in case you, figure out your microphone. So the next one is James Smith. So James, we're going to unmute you. And then you'll have an opportunity to make your comments. Maybe Heather is with you. All right, let's find you here, James. All right, I'm not seeing James. All right, what about Joe Darnell? So Joe, we'll unmute you. Are you there, Joe?
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
You can begin when you're ready.
I'm Joe Darnell. We own the property at 83720 Waldron Drive. I have a couple of comments, observations on the LRE drain conclusions. First, I thought it was short-sighted by LRE not to consider shoreline protection barriers like seawalls as a viable alternative to a drain. They went through the effort of looking at alternatives to purchase all these properties or to alter them, but they never looked at straightforward seawalls as a consideration to alleviate some of these problems at certain areas. And it seems like those property owners who previously made investments in these seawalls fared pretty well during the high water. And even after the high water, it looked like Eagle was continuing to issue permits for additional seawalls or other barriers to be installed on the lake. I think Eagle issuing permits, given the situation, I think is proof that these barriers do work and are viable and probably should have been considered as an alternative. My second comment is also about seawalls, in particular the one at 83686 Waldron Drive, which is my neighbor's. When we bought our property in late 1994, our mortgage company needed confirmation that we were not in a flood plain, which we were not. So in spring, I noticed our neighbor, Mary Hinderleiter, had a seawall. It was the only one at our end of the block. So I was curious and asked her about it. She advised that she had requested the wall and requested it to be moved further out towards the lake. But DEQ said it needed to be installed where it was because of the lake level. So in the early 1990s, it looks like DEQ had established the levels where the seawall needed to be located. It's worth noting that the base of the seawall is at 900.3. And depending on what number you want to use for the lake level that was shown earlier, in July, it was 899.1. That was some 14 inches lower than the base of the seawall. And at 899.1, LRE still wants to drain more water. So at the current level that they had, we're now at about 21 inches lower than the base of the seawall. So based on LRE's drain conclusion, this seawall will never see water again. And it doesn't make any sense, opens up a lot of other questions. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for your comment, Joe. All right, so we're gonna try Heather Smith. Again, looks like you're on unmuted on our end, Heather. All right, and I should mention, if you're having technical difficulties or if you run out of time for comments, we're going to provide those other ways to make a comment tonight. This hearing is just one way to make a comment. So next up is Scott Gordon. So Scott, you are unmuted on our end, and you can just click the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen to unmute yourself, and you can begin when you're ready.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Fantastic. I concur with Joe.
I'm trying to unmute it. I'm trying to get it to work on the screen. There.
Heather's back.
All right, so we can hear you, Heather. Just hold on until Scott's done with his comment.
I don't want to make a comment right now. I'd like to try to get our Wi-Fi to work. It's not working.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks for the information.
Okay. Back at it.
Got it. Gotcha. I paused you so you have the same amount of time. Go ahead, Scott.
All right, no problem. Is this strictly just comments or can I ask questions and get answered? I guess I answered that question. Anyways, yeah, same thing. I've got many comments on the LRE report as far as validities. One in the report they just showed about the rainwater in July, the level of our lake that went up less than a half a foot. According to NOAA, in July, we received over 4 inches, excuse me, over 4 inches of water above normal for a total of over 7 inches of rain in July alone. And the level of our lake didn't go up nearly as advertised in the LRE reports on what that much water, rainwater would do to our lake. Questions I'd like, excuse me, from Eagle is, our lake is a kettle lake. It relies on the wetlands for keeping it clean. How much is this restriction going to affect and destroy our native wetlands for Bankson? I believe Bankson with the wetlands is over 600 acres, so the lake itself that we use is only about a third of the total for our lake. The other question I have regarding that is the filtering to keep out native invasive fish and vegetation. And how often is this filter going to be cleaned and checked, and maintenance, and does maintenance costs taken into account with this? Also, I guess permitting. Future properties too low to the water level. Why? I guess I'm a little concerned on why the houses that are in peril are fairly new and how are they allowed to be built so low to the water level. Let's see, excuse me. Other questions, yes, involve these structures. From the pictures I saw and being on the lake for myself over 50 years, most of these places, there's boathouses listed, there's garages listed. There's a house that was built in the 70s that has taken care of their own problem, going back to what Joe said with seawalls and pumps. Why are we not investigating other avenues besides the drain? Thank you.
All right, Scott, you're at time, so you can follow up with additional comments by the other methods. Also, yeah, sorry if I missed it before, but yeah, we're not responding to questions at this point, but we're providing Zach's contact info for follow-up a little bit later on, and then your comments are part of the record for this application. So thank you for that. All right, next up is Wayne Shirk. So Wayne, you're unmuted on our end. It looks like you're unmuted on yours as well. You can begin when you're ready.
So suffice it to say that there's significant opposition to this drain. There was a lawsuit filed and we've been battling it quite a long time now. We got Derek Haraldson and Matt Diana both involved early on in the process, letting them know that we were concerned about our wetlands. And so we went to considerable expense. There's a committee of people across at the lake that spent all of our personal dollars trying to fight this drain from the beginning. I'd like to make a comment about, and I emailed this LRE report to Zach, but in this LRE report that they got this drain started with, there was significant problems with it, and I think you'll be able to see that if you go through it, but there was plagiarism through Wikipedia. They talked about how there's a culvert below 80th Street connecting Little Bankson to our lake, which there isn't. So I hope you guys take the time to read that. I also submitted the GEI final report, and that's when we went out because we saw how the LRE report really didn't have factual material in it. So we hired somebody to come out, and if you go through that report, you'll see where Stu talks about the damage that's going to be caused to the wetland with the drain. So hold on just a second here too. I also submitted the before and after flooding pictures that I had sent in. If you look at it, there's 42 pages of pictures that show when the water was high and when it was low. And when the water was at its highest, they're conveniently calling these structures or improvements or whatever, but they're all garages that we're looking to save here. So, I hope you take a look at all those pictures and notice that there was only one first floor structure, a living structure that got water on their carpet basically. And there was, we don't see the reason to spend this kind of money and to destroy our wetlands just so that we can save one structure. One of the pictures that is on the LRE report for this is a garage. It happens to be my garage, and it was 3 feet underwater but it is a garage, and I'm strictly against the drain, and I think we should look at a different avenue to protect the wetland.
All right, thank you for your comment, Wayne.
Yeah.
All right, next up is Nancy Fuller.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. You can
Okay.
begin when you're ready.
I am I'm calling with concerns. I'm against the drain. I'm a 66-year-old, but have been on the lake all those years. Plus, you know, it came through my dad, through his dad. So we've been on the lake for a very, very long time. And I'm going to speak just briefly to the petition. It was given to me and it was represented as my father signed it back in the day. It wasn't my father's signature. It was my grandfather's signature way, way, way back in the day, and it didn't go through. And there's a reason for that I'd have to question. But I also want to bring up that and I can't do this by memory because I can't remember that good, but in either the 1968, 1970s, the DNR approved for another gentleman on the south side of the lake to push dirt into the lake, and he was going to put all this property, and I don't even know what he was going to do with it, actually, trailer park or something, which is now a point. But when they did that, they also closed off the channel on the left side of the lake, and it's by the house. One of the houses that you guys showed is underwater. Well, that's kind of, I think, when the Bankson Lake Association was formed, and the reason it was formed was because when they closed off that channel, then we immediately had this, what is wetland, swampy area, but it was closed off and strangulated. And during that time, we lost the bullfrogs because we used to go frogging as kids, and you could go back to the swamp and do frogging and all that. They all died. There were dead fish all over. And then after Bankson Lake Association won that battle, and they did, that channel had to be reopened. But throughout doing all that, it was after all of that that we had the kabamba weed, the milfoil weed, the zebra mussels, which I guess, you know, come in on boats or whatever. But our lake became contaminated pretty severely. And we're constantly fighting that now with weed control, and that's not healthy for the lake. So I think one of the biggest concerns is, what is this really going to do to the lake, and what promise can you make? Back then, the DNR thought it would be fine, and it didn't end up being that way. So I kind of hate to mess with something that it's a natural flow. It's a natural lake. I think Scott said it's a kettle lake. I mean, there's a reason it's a natural lake, and it's worked that way. So I'm against it, would love to see it go away, and hope the people that built their house in the lake can find a better solution. That's it for me.
All right, thanks for your comments, Nancy.
Yep.
All right. Looks like Chris Oxley's next, but we're not seeing Chris in the list tonight. Feel free to raise your hand, Chris, and we'll get you if you're logged into somebody else or if you're on the phone. And then the last person or people, Clinton and Daphne Sebastian, are on the last names on the list here. So we'll unmute you. Clinton and Daphne, you are unmuted on our end. Feel free to unmute yourselves, and it looks like you are. You can begin when you're ready.
Okay, good evening, gentlemen. Just a couple of comments. I'm basically just reiterating what some of the other residents of the lake have said. Additionally, which may not be Eagle's concern, but I like to bring it up because I felt very deceived when I signed the original petition. I was not given the full information, otherwise I never would have signed the petition. I want to reiterate what Joe said about the seawalls. I feel that there are just a couple of houses that were built within the last 10 years that were probably the closest to be affected. And building seawalls would be a lot more beneficial for our lake as far as preserving the wetlands, our fish, you know, everything. And I think that that should be considered and wasn't by LRE. Additionally, I would like to mention a couple of things that Chad said when he was talking about, you know, his survey and the proposal and everything. The public health, convenience, public welfare. I want to reiterate the fact that never at any point in time was the roads impassable to emergency vehicles. And we received a letter from the Buren County emergency system stating so. And I believe I sent an email giving that information prior to tonight's hearing. As far as the public health, I think that Chad said, quote, may be coming down the line as far as a sewer. I'm pretty sure that on September 11th, 2024, I may not have the exact date, at the Porter Township board meeting, it was approved that we are going to get a sewer at Bankson Lake. That would alleviate the public health concern because we will no longer have septic systems, which seem to be a big part of LRE's study. And I would like to make sure that Eagle, and I would request that you guys look into that because it's coming. I think that's it.
All right, thank you for your comments. All right, so before we go to the raised hands, it looks like Heather is back on. Heather, if you would like to make a comment, feel free to raise your hand. And we'll try to get you your comment. Other than that, we're going to move on to the raised hands. And it looks like Joe Darnell. And Joe, I know you already gave a comment. We'll unmute you, but we can only take a comment from someone else on the line with you if you have someone. Is there somebody else on the line, Joe? Looks like you're muted still. Unmuted.
Yeah, I don't want to make it, but I want to make you aware.
And Joe, we can't take your comment. What you can do is contact Zach afterwards. But
I'm just, sir, one quick second. I'm just trying to.
Sorry, Joe. In order to make it fair, it's one comment per person. So you can follow up with Zach or Derek afterwards. All right. Next up is Seth Churchill. All right, Seth, you are unmuted on our end. You can unmute yourself and begin when you're ready. Are you there, Seth? All right, looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Keep your hand raised and we'll come back to you if you can get your microphone situation resolved. So after Seth is Lindsay Johnson. So Lindsay, we're going to unmute you. And then you can unmute yourself. Are you there, Lindsay?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, yeah, feel free to make your comment when you're ready.
So the only, comments I had was I'm extremely concerned about the ecological impacts to the lake and the ecological impacts to the animals in the lake and around the lake. I've been on the lake for close to 35 years and the water level has always fluctuated. It's gone high, it's gone low. There's pictures from when I was a kid of it being very, very low where, you had to have many dock sections just to get out. It was very mucky. So I'm extremely concerned that if we drain the lake and don't let it happen naturally, then when the water does go low, as it often has, that we'll have more of a swamp and will really mess up the natural levels of the lake. My husband and I own a cottage that had water around it and we are extremely against the drain and don't want to see whatever man-made things that we might do to help alleviate a few problems here and there, what that will do to our lake over time.
All right, thanks for your comment, Lindsay. All right. Seth?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. You can begin your comment when you're ready.
Before I get started, we have 15 people in this room that want to make a comment.
Okay.
Joe Darnell was trying to tell you that we were having issues.
Okay.
So what's going on?
All right, I appreciate that. So Seth, the way we're going to do this is just, so you can make your comment and then you can have the next person, they'll come up, state their name and make their comment and we'll just go one by one. So whoever wants to go first.
All right. I will, I guess I will go first if you can still hear me.
Yep, we can hear you.
What we've got going on here, we've got two different computers because one of them kind of keeps cutting in and out. So the one that's on display is cutting in and out. So you need to kind of bear with us just a little bit. It may be a little bit clumsy over here. My comment is basically centered around, you guys admitted or had made a statement that Eagle's job is to be sure that anything that is permitted does not negatively affect state waters and wetlands. I think it would be very difficult to argue or support that lowering a lake level, removing adjacent attached wetlands would not negatively affect state waters on Bankson Lake. The next item I'd like to move over onto is kind of tied in with Joe Darnell's comment on seawalls. If I understand the Eagle process correctly, it is Eagle's responsibility to establish an overall high water mark in a lake, any body of water, etc. So if you approve a permit for a seawall, that permit should be approved within established overall high water mark. In the case of the seawall next to Joe Parman, adjacent to Joe Parman, the base of that seawall should be essentially setting at an established overall high water mark, which is around 900.5 feet. It seems odd that we would now entertain installing a drain in state waters that would lower that overall high water mark that's already been established on multiple occasions. We have lots of seawalls. They're all at about the same height of 900.5 down to an elevation of 899 with stop boards that would allow it to reduce all the way to 898. You know, if we're going to put a control structure in, it doesn't seem like that structure should be set any lower than the established overall high water mark, which, as Eagle has already established on prior permits, is 900.5, not 899. That concludes my comments.
Okay, thanks for your comments, Seth.
All right, can you hear me? This is James Smith. I'll talk next.
Yep, you can go next.
All right, I'm Bankson Lake Association president. Wanted to say our association represents about 75% of the lake, and we voted unanimously against putting a drain in Bankson Lake. But I had some other comments ready, but after going through this hearing, I've changed mine. My comment is, if Eagle is going to take the word of the applicant, who is the people protecting our environment, LRE is making money off of this project, and a lot of their answers to questions are either incomplete or inaccurate. Therefore, all their data should be suspect. I would hope Eagle will do their own studies to make sure they have accurate information for this project before permitting it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for your comment, James.
Hello, my name's Randy Rice. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, I live on 80907 Lytle's Landing. The very first picture that you had in there of a structure was my dad's garage at the time. He is now deceased. The garage had some water in it. He was elderly, wasn't very proactive about the higher water. So we had taken care of that. But the Rice family has owned and maintained that property for 70 plus years. We are in what is declared as a high-risk area according to the county drain commissioner. We have maintained and lived on this property in a proper, clean, and safe manner without the interference of government. The water has been up and down over the years. Everyone on the lake is well aware of the fluctuation of the water levels of this lake. The last rising of the lake, we did safely and successfully sandbag the property to protect our dwellings. My wife and I recently took over the family property. We have since remodeled the buildings and in addition, raise the concrete pad 5 inches to avoid a water problem with possible rising, and I repeat, a possible rising. The lake levels are unpredictable. The fish, wildlife, and wetlands are predictable, but not with a man-made drain of our environment. Fish, wildlife, and wetland will be in great question of predictability. Mother Nature will take care of herself, and we, the guests of Bankson Lake, need to step up and take self-responsibility for our own properties for the sake of Bankson Lake and her inhabitants. Respectfully, the Rice family, young and old. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment.
My name is Karen Churchill. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to read an excerpt out of an article that was published by the DEQ dated July 23rd of 2014. It's called The Status and Trends of Michigan Wetlands Pre-European Settlement to 2005. The excerpt reads, "It is clear that our wetland resources continue to be depleted at a rate that while slowing, is still faster than efforts to restore or create wetlands. Furthermore, areas with historic loss of wetlands are still struggling with consequences of that loss, i.e. water quality issues and loss of wildlife. In addition, Michigan's wetlands continue to face increasing threats, including historic threats with agriculture and development." In this article, they break down the wetlands in Michigan by county, and the pre-European wetland acreage for Van Buren County was 115,023 acres. In 2005, the wetland acres totaled 54,736 acres for Van Buren County. That equates to a 52% loss of wetlands. If we have lost over 50% of our wetlands in Van Buren County within this time period, and I'm assuming we've probably lost more after that, why would we encourage even more human intervention to destroy more of our natural resources to save a few structures that could either be raised, torn down, or protected by a seawall? These are far less evasive measures and with significantly far less costs. Furthermore, with the sewer project being approved for Bankson Lake, the septic systems will no longer be an issue and will correct any issues more effectively than a drain on Bankson. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Karen.
Who's next? Chris? Heather?
We've got some more coming up in just a second.
Okay, no problem.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
This is Chris Oxley. I'm Porter Township Supervisor. I got to apologize for some of the technical difficulties we've had tonight, and that obviously shows why we had some concerns of some of our elderly people around the lake being able to properly get on some of these hearings. One of the reasons we opened the Township Hall. I would like to just make a couple quick comments. One thing I did notice, a fair amount of those photos that were in the pictures, I do know for a fact some of those structures were built without proper permits. A few of them in recent times when the Porter Township was between building inspectors due to a sudden death. So that is a little concerning. I would like to let you know that the Marcellus Township Supervisor is here also, along with our engineering consultant. We will be preparing a written statement with some comments that we hope you guys look at in the future. So be on the lookout for that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your comment, Chris.
This is Heather Smith. I apologize for having the problems with our audio, but this is the reason we wanted an in-person hearing. So I would like that noted, that we asked for an in-person hearing and they're not able to have it. I know that the signature issue was brought up by Daphne earlier, but it is repeated many times in the documents that there were 69 freeholders. I'd like to specifically say freeholders are more than one person in one household. So if there are 5 people living in one household, they have 5 freeholders there. So that number sounds like a higher number than what it actually is. And several of those 69 wanted their names recanted and it was not allowed. So it's just not as popular of a project as what has been presented. Also, one of the pictures that was presented was of Beechwood Isle, the road that was flooded. And that road is a private road. I don't think that it is the government's responsibility to fix private roads. It was fixed by the owners of the road who use the road at their own cost. I don't know that that should be a part of your project when it is not the government's responsibility to maintain that road. I also have concerns about the structures. The structures, a lot of the elevations listed are of garages and boathouses. Those are much easier and cheaper to fix on an individual basis than to put this entire project in. It is very easy to raise a garage if that's what needs to be done in order to alleviate their water issues. And our neighbors are willing to help with that process, but are not willing to put in an entire drain to save a garage. That seems a little extreme. And I believe those are the comments I have for you right now. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the comments, Heather.
Anybody else?
2 more coming.
Hi, my name is Robin Cortez. I'm a homeowner on Waldron Drive. My husband and I just want it on record that we were both original signers to the petition. So going back to what Heather and Daphne have both mentioned, we were falsely given information about this whole process. I'm sitting here wondering, how did we even get to this? We originally signed with the intent to check the feasibility of what a possible drain would be, costs involved, and it just seems that it's taken a life of its own. And I, again, wanted on record that if we could recant our signatures, we would definitely do so, and how inappropriate it is that the applicant, Mr. Parman, has run with this, and it is not the intent of most of the residents on the lake. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Gary Hainrahar, County Road 352. I am a holder of a significant portion of the adjacent wetlands to Bankson Lake. I just want to reiterate how badly misrepresented the original circulation of the petition was. We were told it committed us to nothing. It would cost us nothing to sign it. And that was an outright lie. If there's any way to go backwards on this, that's great, but I don't think there is. Secondly, the mailing list that was used for the public notice, I have no idea where that mailing list came from, but it is loaded with omissions and errors. People that have sold their property years ago are still on that list. The new buyers of the property who are on the lake are not listed on the mailing list. I don't know how you can have a public hearing when the whole premise, the whole notification process is corrupted. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Anybody else? I think that's all we have at the Township Hall.
All right. Well, thank you all for your comments. All right. Next up is Lindsay Johnson. So Lindsay, you're unmuted on our end.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, this is actually Matt Johnson, Lindsay's husband. We own a cottage at 25958 Shore Drive. I just wanted to say we got to this point because less than a handful of people decided in the last 10 years to build their homes too close to a lake that is millions of years old. It does not seem logical to me that the response to this is to make an attempt to affect the lake. There will be unintended negative ecological consequences if this drain is to go through. We're both adamantly opposed to this. And at the same time, we own a cottage that a couple years ago was half surrounded by water. So we feel very passionately about this, even though we stand to have to deal with the consequences of high water. At the end of the day, this is fundamentally wrong and it will have negative ecological consequences. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. All right, is there anybody else who has not yet made a comment but would like to make a comment? Again, it's one comment per person for 3 minutes. If people are on the phone, we do have some phone-in callers. You can select #2 on your receiver, and what that will do is that will raise your hand in Zoom, and then we'll call on you using the last 4 digits of your phone number. All right, and it looks like Wayne Shirk has your hand raised. Wayne, do you have anyone else on the line that would like to make a comment? Because I know you've already spoken.
Sadie Shirk would like to make a comment. And she would like to say that it was totally misrepresented on the septic as being a problem. And
wait,
there is
is she unable to make a comment?
Yeah, she's got laryngitis. But the E. coli levels in the lake don't support that there's a problem.
Wayne, she's gonna have to speak herself, or she can write it in by one of the other methods here. But there isn't a way for us to know if these are your comments or if they're hers or making it fair. So what we'll do is we'll provide that in other ways to make a comment. She can make her comments that way unless she would like to speak right now. All right, thanks for understanding. All right, are there anybody else who has not yet made a comment who would like to make a comment today? Again, you would need to raise your hand in Zoom, or you can select #2 if you're on the phone. And what we'll do is we'll call on you using the last 4 digits like we had mentioned before. If we don't have anybody else who would like to make a comment today, what we'll go on to is the other ways to make a comment. Again, if you weren't able to make a comment tonight, or if you had something additional to say, you're more than welcome to. We'll provide the information to get a hold of Zach to add to your comments. And then we're going to provide Zach's contact information for follow-up in case you have additional questions tonight. So I'm still not seeing any other raised hands. So what we'll do is, Zach, if you'll read the closing statement for us tonight, we'll wrap up this part of the hearing.
Thanks, Ryan. So the closing statement goes, thank you for the comments and cooperation. We appreciate your interest in the proposed project and that you took the time to be here tonight. As indicated at the beginning of the hearing, you may submit additional written comments until November 17th, 2024. Following the close of the public comment period, we will consider all comments received and make a decision on the proposed project. Just to remind those that may still want to submit a comment, comments can be submitted via the My Enviro portal, by email or US mail. Hearing is now closed. Thanks again.
All right, thank you, Zach. Yeah, we're going to put that information in the chat again on how to contact Zach, and that'll be the next slide. But it's through My Enviro, HQ1XX 8WAQNKZ is the submission number. Just reading that again for the folks who are on the phone. Or by mail to Eagle Water Resources Division, Kalamazoo District Office 7953 Adobe Road, ADOBE Road, Kalamazoo, Michigan 49009-5025. And again, it's going to be open until November 17th. And then here's Zach's contact information. I think that was already put in the chat for us. you can contact Zach Harrison, who's an environmental quality analyst, at 269-569-6972. And again, that's 269-569-6972. Or at harrisonz2@michigan.gov. So that's the email address, and that's HARRISON2@michigan.gov. And that almost wraps it up. Do you have any closing comments for us tonight, Derek?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Ryan. Just want to thank everybody for taking some time out of their evening, out of their busy schedule. It's been a busy week. There's a lot going on. So we definitely appreciate everybody taking the time to participate. Thanks for being patient, on our end with the technical issues. And I'm glad that everybody had a chance to participate. And thanks again for keeping it, civil. I think we had a good hearing and definitely had the opportunity for everybody to comment. So thanks again for everybody who participated and attended the meeting. That's what we have them for. So thank you.
All right, thanks for those comments, Derek. Just I'm going to wrap up with a reminder that this hearing was recorded and will be on our YouTube channel in the next couple days. If you'd like to watch it again or forward it on to somebody, it'll be available. Thank you all for participating in this process, for asking the questions that you did, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Thank you again.